Hello there. This is a video about operations with integers, and what we're going to do today is we're going to be adding integers, and this is going to be adding positive and negative numbers. Now we're going to talk about four scenarios that are going to pop up. We're going to be adding positive integers, which is something you've been doing for a very long time, adding negative integers together, adding positive and negative integers, and then subtracting negative integers. So let's just hop over to adding positive integers. Now let's just do something simple. Let's say I've got 3 plus 7, okay? And if I've got 3 plus 7, we know that, we can do that pretty much in our heads, and that's going to be the same thing as me writing 9, okay? Now, the one thing I want you guys to think about is a number line, all right? And I'm going to number this from 0 all the way to 10. Now, my first step in using a number line to add two numbers means that I'm going to take my value of 3 and I'm going to plot that on the number line. So here's my value of 3. Now, we want to look at the operation that we're doing, okay? We're adding. So I'm going to move, remember adding means that we're going to move to the right. Okay, and if we had subtraction, we're going to move to the left. All right, and what we're doing is we're adding 7. So I'm going to move 7 spaces to the right. Now watch what I do here. I'm going to start here. At 3, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we arrive at 10, which is my answer. Okay, so that's what we do when we're adding positive integers. So you had to understand the concept of a number line first in order to do this. But we want to use this number line because what I'm going to show you are tactics on how we can always use a number line for these types of problems. Okay, now let's do this where we're adding negative numbers. Now when I'm adding negative numbers, let's just choose a couple of numbers here. Let's choose negative 5 minus 2, okay? And we could also write this as negative 5 plus negative 2. These two things mean the same thing, okay? So if I take negative 5 and subtract 2, okay, that's the same thing as me taking negative 5 plus negative 2. Now, when I'm doing this, when I'm operating with negative numbers, I often think of the money concept. I owe someone $5, and I owe them an additional $2. How much money do I owe them? And if we were to do the math here, this would just end up giving me negative 7. But let me show you how to use a number line to do this. So let me draw a number line, and let me use some negative numbers here. In my first step, I want to plot my first number. So I'm going to plot the negative 5 on my number line. Okay, and since we're adding a negative or subtracting, okay, this piece here or here, all right, remember that we're moving to the left. All right, if it was positive, we'd be moving to the right. Now, I noticed that you see a plus sign here, okay, but because we're adding a negative number, this takes precedence over just a positive number, okay? So we're going to take this number. We plotted negative 5. We're going to move 2 spaces to the left. All right, so I'm going to move over 1, 2 spaces, and then we arrive at negative 7, which is also our answer. Okay, so that's how we think about adding negative numbers. Now let's take a look at adding positive and negative numbers. We have case 1, all right, so we have scenario 1. And what this means is that the positive number is big and the negative number is small. Okay, and this is kind of the easy one. So let's choose a large positive number. So I'm just going to choose, say, I don't know, let's choose 8, okay? And then we're going to add a negative 2 to this, all right? So in this example, what I've got is I've got a positive and negative number, and we're adding them. The positive number is large, and the negative number is small. And I'm just looking at the number themselves. I'm just looking at the number 8 and the number 2. You can think absolute value on that, but for our purposes, the 8 is big, the 2 is small. All right. Now what I want to do, you can look at this a couple of ways. I could really write this as 8 minus 2. Okay. And, we know what that's going to give us. We know that's going to give us 6, all right? So if we think about this, and I draw a number line, let me go ahead and number this. Now what I want to do is start this equation at 8. Okay, so my first number is 8, so I'm going to put that number here. And then what I'm going to do, because I'm subtracting 2, all right, what I'm going to do, because of this negative here, we're going to move to the left. Okay, if it was adding, it'd be positive to the right, or using a plus. All right, so because we're going -2, we're going to count to the left 2 units. So it's going to be 1, 2, and we end up at the number 6, okay? Now, the other thing that you can do here, you can reorder this, all right? The associative property, or I'm not sorry, the commutative property is still going to work. So if I had -2 plus 8, okay, let me show you that on a number line, all right? Let me number this. And what I would do is I would plot my -2 on that number line. Okay, here's my starting point. And because we're simply just adding an 8, that means I'm going to go to the right. If it was negative, we'd go to the left. All right. So I start at -2, and I'm going to move 8 spaces over to the right. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we end up at 6. And that was the same thing that we got here. Okay. Now we also have scenario 2. All right. And so scenario 2 is a little bit different. And what that's going to be is that the positive number is going to be small and the negative number is going to be big. All right, so let me show you an example of what I'm talking about here. What this means is, like, let's say I take 2 plus, -8, okay? And let's just use those same numbers, all right? And so my positive number is small. My negative number, the value of that is 8, and that's bigger than 2. Okay, so you don't think about the signs when I'm doing this. I just go, okay, I have a positive and a negative. Which one's bigger? Which one's smaller? Okay. Now I can use a number line, or you can just kind of think intuitively about this. Because I'm adding a negative, really what I can also say is I'm doing 2 minus 8. So if I have $2 and I owe someone $8, how much would I owe them? And that value is going to be -6. Okay? I do these in my head, but you can always use a number line. Let me order. And if I do this and I start at 2, I'm going to plot the point 2 on my number line. Okay? And if I'm going to be subtracting 8, okay, then really what I'm doing is I'm moving to the left, okay, and not to the right. If we were adding, it'd be to the right. All right, so let's start at 2, and let's count 8 units to the left. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that lands us at -6, which is what we got. Okay, now we can also use the commutative property and reorder this. And I can write this as -8 plus 2. Okay, now because of however you want to read it, this is the same thing as 2 plus -8. All right, and let's use a number line to figure out what we're going to do here. All right. So again, I'm going to plot my point of -8 on my number line. Okay, if we were subtracting, we'd go left. If we're adding, we go to the right. So because we're adding 2 to this, all right, I'm going to move 2 spaces to the right, and that's going to give me -6, okay? So it doesn't matter which one you use, but when you're adding positive and negative numbers, you've got 2 different scenarios that you can have with these numbers. And the more practice that you do, the better. But I encourage you guys to do it in your head, use a calculator, but also feel free to use a number line if you can't use a calculator. All right, so let's take a look at the last option here. And this is subtracting negative integers, okay? And it says just what it means. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take 5 minus a -2, okay? And when I see this, I have to think the opposite of a negative, okay? And the opposite of a negative is to simply just add, okay? Opposite of a negative number is the positive number. So I could change this to 5 plus 2, okay? So whenever you subtract a negative, you change it to a positive, all right? And we do 5 plus 2, and that's going to give us 7, all right? And you can have all sorts of numbers, okay? You could have a negative number, -6, minus negative 10. Okay, and you can have all sorts of options here. But what you have to do is you have to think about the fact that you're subtracting a negative, and that's going to change to a positive. Okay, however you want to write that, however you want to use that, but you've got negative 6 plus 10, and then you go back to one of these options. Okay, and you can use a number line to do this. All right, and let's just do it real quick. And so I initially want to plot negative 6. I'm going to do that on my number line, okay? And since I'm going to be adding 10, all right, that means I'm going to move to the right because we're adding. If we were subtracting, we'd move to the left. All right, so we're going to count 10 spaces. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and that's going to give us 4. Now, one of the things I could have also done on this problem, you have so many options. I could have reordered this and written this as 10 plus negative 6, and rewritten that because adding a negative was really meaning that you're subtracting. So I've got 10 minus 6, and that's going to give me 4. Okay, either way you want to look at it, guys, doesn't matter. All right, so that's the idea. All right, so we're operations with integers, adding integers using both positive and negative numbers. This is going to be true for all cases. This is very, very fundamental and very important that you know how to do this because you will be doing it for the rest of your math career.